for them, but contrary to what the member says, we have no plans to sell them or enter in part of the mixed ownership process.
Question number 3, Metiria Turei.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker, tēnā koutou katoa te whare. My question is to the Prime Minister and asks, does he stand by his reported statement that, quote, anyone expecting details of a cosy sort of little deal would be disappointed, end quote, by the Deputy Auditor-General's report into the SkyCity Convention Centre negotiations?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, yes, absolutely. The Deputy Auditor-General's report examines all 3 stages of the process to date and concludes that the initial exploratory and feasibility stage, that was the stage I was involved, and the 3rd stage, the current negotiations, which the member is asking about, were entirely appropriate. The report noted some procedural issues, primarily that officials did not do enough planning, which I understand the Ministry has taken on board, and that the assessment of the EIO process went on too long. However, as the Auditor-General said in the report and made quite clear, that the substantive outcome would not be different, which is why the central finding of the report and the basic accusation that that member made and why she owes me an apology is that no evidence to suggest that the final deal to negotiate...
Point of order. Point of order.
You know, I was, sir, that answer went on far too long. It was a straightforward question. It was a straightforward question. It is very... We on this side of the House were... allowing time for the Prime Minister to answer in full, but that, I think, undid the patience of the House, and I would ask you to make sure he doesn't do it again.
The patience of the member, I accept that. It was a very long answer. It was a very full answer. Does the member have supplementaries?
Thank you, Mr.
Point of order.
Mr.
Point
Speaker,
of order.
while the co-leader of the Greens was making her point of order, 3 government front bench ministers, 3 in the second row, and 6 backbenchers interjected. At least.
I thank the member for his assistance. As it was mentioned yesterday, points of order should be heard in silence, and if they're not, then we get the sort of disorder that we're experiencing today. So I request the cooperation of all members for points of order to be heard in silence. Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Prime Minister confirm that he made that statement hours before the Deputy Auditor-General released her report into the pokies for the Convention Centre deal?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, that may well be right. I can't remember the exact time. It was probably Monday at my post-Cabinet press conference, which takes place at about 4 o'clock. The report was released, I think, at 2 o'clock, so I guess it was 22 hours.
Supplementary question.
Point of order, sir.
Point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I seek leave to table a transcript of a Radio New Zealand interview that was not, sir, that is not publicly available.
But it is publicly available. Order.
Showing Jonke made that statement yesterday.
Order. The member will resume her seat. We discussed only yesterday, when I elaborated on the tabling of documents, we are not tabling transcripts from radio interviews. They are freely available to members if members want to search it. Yes, they are. Is the member disputing my ruling? Because my patience is getting particularly thin today.
Point of order, sir.
Is the member disputing my ruling?
No, point of order, sir. Point of order, sir.
Is the member about to dispute my ruling?
No, point of order, sir.
Then I will hear the point of order.
Sir, yesterday you did clarify the tabling of documents, and you did say that old reports could be tabled.
Yes.
And that reports or information that was not publicly available or widely publicly available could also be tabled. Now, if you had given me the chance to explain, this is a transcript that is not publicly available. Even if it was reported yesterday, it still meets that criteria.
Order. The member will resume her seat. The member now is disputing my ruling, and if she continues to do that, I will ask the member to leave the House. If the member continues, order, otherwise we will be having somebody with early showers. The member is disputing my ruling. What I also said yesterday is we'll table documents that I feel are useful to debate in the House. Now, if members are keen enough to discover that transcript, then they have the ability to go back to their offices and do so. I will not be putting the leave. Now, does the member have a supplementary?
Supplementary question, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, Right Honourable John Key.
Mr Speaker, speaking to the point of order, just to your ruling, sir, that was a transcript of morning report that would be available on their website. It's freely available everywhere.
And so I've ruled. Chris Hipkins, point of order.
Point of order. I don't want to litigate this specific issue. I would like to ask you, Mr Speaker, if there was an opportunity for you to consider the wider issue of radio transcripts. Because in the case of radio transcripts, it is possible to purchase them often. Otherwise, and ministers have them available because they can purchase them. Opposition members can't purchase them, and therefore we have to either have our staff transcribe them, which is quite a resource-intensive exercise, or once it's already been transcribed by someone, get it from someone else. So can I ask you to consider it further?
And I will consider it further for the benefit of the member and for the House. Further supplementary, Metiria Turei?
Still got one to go. Yes, Mr Speaker. Thank you, Mr Speaker. My supplementary question. Is the Prime Minister aware that the Auditor-General, the office, expected that report to be treated in the strictest confidence because of concerns about market sensitivities, and that no one other than ministers, SkyCity and the Auditor-General's office had access to that report before 2 p.m. yesterday?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I'm well and truly aware there's an embargo, but as we know, for instance, last Friday I read reports of characterisation of Shane Jones's Auditor-General's report. The comments that I made, someone claiming of a cosy sort of little deal, is hardly market sensitive, and as the member knows, her basic accusation and claim to the Auditor-General was as follows, because maybe she needs reminding of it, that somehow the main question underlying the inquiry was whether the government's decision— I did answer it directly.
Order. The member is attempting to answer your question, but if the member continues to ask questions and then when rises to her feet through the answer, you're not going to hear the answer to the question you've asked. Have the further
continuing. So continuing, the main basis of the allegation made by the Greens, and that was the basis of the report to the Auditor-General, was that whether the government's decision to negotiate with SkyCity had been influenced by inappropriate considerations such as connections between political parties and business.
Winston Peters, point of order.
Mr Speaker, the question concerns the propriety of the early leak by the Prime Minister of a confidential document. What he makes of the document has nothing to do with this. It's the act of leaking it in advance, which we all know happened.
Again,
get him to answer the question properly.
Point of order.
Mr Speaker, Mr Peters has misled the House. I've not leaked any document. I'd ask him to withdraw and apologise.
Yeah. Does the member have further supplementaries?
Supplementary, Mr Speaker.
Metiria Turei.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Why did the Prime Minister repeatedly refer to the Auditor-General's report over the months that he had privileged access to it, including in January when he said, quote, "Put it this way, I didn't lose any sleep when I was on holiday over it," and then again on Monday this week, "Put it this way, I'm losing even less sleep about it," end quote, if not to indicate to the market and to everyone else that the deal was safe and sound?
Right Honourable Prime
Speaker,
Minister.
firstly, the member's making many leaps forward. There is no deal on the table at this point. That's the first thing. Secondly, there's nothing wrong with the general characterisation. There's no leaking of a report. And the characterisation was, of course, quite accurate because as I picked up the New Zealand Herald today, I read the editorial. It said it finds nothing wrong with the Prime Minister's dealing with the SkyCity.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei. Order. Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Is the Prime Minister saying to the people of New Zealand that because he wanted people to believe that he was vindicated, that he was therefore entitled to breach the Auditor-General's confidentiality rules by releasing selective details of the report that he had privileged access to?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, no. I think I'm quite entitled to give a general characterisation. By the way, that general characterisation has proved to be absolutely correct. I quote from the report when it says, "We have seen no evidence to suggest that the final decision to negotiate with SkyCity was influenced by any inappropriate considerations." And Mr Speaker, let me make this one last point. This is the member that went to the Auditor-General and said we'd done something wrong. There's nothing wrong, and now all she can go on is the process of my characterisation.
Dr. Russell Norman.
Mr. Speaker, I refer you to Standing Order 3832, which states very clearly that the reply to any question must be concise and confined to the subject matter of the question asked. The Prime Minister has repeatedly today gone well beyond the questions asked to make his political point. That is not what he's required to do by the standing orders, and I would ask you to enforce them.
I'll just rule for the benefit of Mr Norman first. I think when you consider the content of the questions that have been asked in relation to this, then the Prime Minister has every right to respond fully and with some political connotation. We have a further... Yes?
Which standing order says that?
Oh, we're not getting into now quoting standing order. My job here is to anticipate the quality of the question and the quality of the answer, and I am ruling today that the quality of the question has received a perfectly satisfactory answer from the Prime Minister. Are there further supplementaries? Point of order.
Mr Speaker,
Mallard.
Could you please issue to members both the two rulings that you have just given and indicate which previous Speaker's rulings will be cut out as a result of them?
I can, but I certainly don't intend to do that on the floor of the House today, but I'm happy to look at that work for the benefit of the honourable member. Supplementary question, Honourable David Parker.
Was the phrase that the Prime Minister has quoted from the report today, and I'll just repeat it, we have seen no evidence to suggest that the final decision to negotiate with SkyCity was influenced by any inappropriate considerations included in the draft report that was earlier circulated to him?
Mr Speaker, yes.
Question number 4, supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Will the Prime Minister take any ministerial responsibility for a process which the Deputy Auditor-General has said left other bidders out in the cold and was also described by the Deputy Auditor-General as neither transparent nor even-handed?
Mr Speaker, I think what is fair to say is that officials will go away, I'm sure, and look at the process, but as the Auditor-General's report makes quite clear, this was a non-standard type of procurement, and it's likely that governments will have more of these types of things in the future. What I go back to the member and say, though, is she went to the Auditor-General, she made a claim, it was utterly wrong, and she's come today, theoretically, to pound me in the House, and the only thing she can ask about is whether I was right saying it was a cosy little deal or not, and I was right, it wasn't a cosy little deal.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Does the Prime Minister hold the Auditor-General's office in such disregard that he was prepared to breach their confidentiality rules, to make himself look good, to misrepresent the report while leaving his officials to take the blame?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, no, and I've done nothing to make myself look good. I go back to the Auditor-General's report that says we have seen no evidence to suggest that the final decision to negotiate with SkyCity was influenced by any inappropriate considerations. Mr Speaker, sadly for the Greens, she's gone on a wild goose chase and found at the end of it there is no goose waiting there for her.
Supplementary question, Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Does the Prime Minister expect the public of New Zealand to believe that he has a meeting with SkyCity and neither he or his staff or SkyCity keep any record of what happened at that meeting?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, I have many meetings. I have many meetings where I don't keep records of those meetings. I meet people all the time, and actually so does the member, because if I want to quote from some of the meetings he held in scampy restaurants, he might say the same.
Point of order, Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Oh, you might well smile at that, Mr Speaker, but you were sued on that very issue yourself. So I wouldn't get too happy about that.
Don't bring the Speaker...
But back to my point.
Order. If the member has a point of order, I'll listen to it.
Exactly.
But I certainly will not tolerate him bringing the Speaker into...
Oh, yes. Well, if you found it so funny, I thought you should be brought to your memory.
Order.
But here's my point.
Order. I will give the member one more opportunity if he wants to raise a genuine point of order. Point of order.
Speaker, it's the same standing order that Russell Norman cited. The Prime Minister's answer had nothing to do with the nature of the question that I asked, and I wanted to know how come such an important meeting happened and no one there had any memory of the
order. The point of orders won't be used to raise a further supplementary. It certainly was not helpful with the last part of the Prime Minister's answer to the tension of the House today. I call on question number 4, Dennis O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This question is addressed to the Minister